Hi, how is everybody doing? This is a beautiful day, and I want to share with you uh, what I'm going to call a mission moment. So, these little, and you're going to be proud of me because these are going to be short. I promise you, they're going to be short, little reflections on what it means to be the church in this pandemic. So, in the last couple of months, we've seen our gatherings disappear. This creates a crisis for our congregation. So I looked up the word crisis, and interesting, it comes from a Greek word meaning decision or decisive point. So, are we at a decisive point in our ministry? Does this present us with a crisis or with an opportunity? And I want to look at the opportunity in these series of videos I'm going to share with you. So it will feel like a crisis because we have to change our habits and how we prefer participating in church. It's going to feel like a crisis because we're cut off from our pastors and volunteers who we depend on to do the church business. It will feel like a crisis because we're used to being somewhat passive churchgoers. Think about it. In other words, church is something that we attend. It sometimes can be viewed as a concert or a lecture or a conference, but that's not what it means to be the church. So our first urge is to cry out, well, we haven't done church this way before. I know I felt that way, and it can be paralyzing, but we got to look at the opportunity as well. Because Jesus is not standing in the middle of all this disruption, wringing his hands and saying, man, I never saw this coming. What shall we do? Instead, as usual, Jesus is up to something. He's always up to something. He's risen from the dead to lead his church, to bring the saving message, the message of his death and resurrection to the world around us. So he is redeeming this disruption. It's a decisive point when we can start making maybe clear-headed decisions about how we can help each other be church for the foreseeable future. And that's what I'm going to try and do with these little videos. So Jesus is shaking up the church, not so we're alarmed by a crisis, but so we wake up to an opportunity to rediscover what it means to be the church. Acts chapter 1, verse 8, Jesus speaks these famous words, you will be my witnesses. And we're going to talk about what that really means in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria to the ends of the earth. However, it's not until Acts chapter 8, verse 1, just after Stephen is martyred and a great persecution breaks out in Jerusalem, that the church is essentially forced to scatter into Jerusalem and Samaria. It says, on that day, a great persecution broke out against the church at Jerusalem, and all, except the apostles, were scattered throughout Judea and Samaria. Man, that's an interesting passage in light of what we're seeing happening today. To our 21st century ears, that would seem to signal the death of the church. They were scattered and they were separated from the apostles, their leaders, their spiritual leaders. I mean, if our congregation was scattered and separated from our pastors and volunteers, what would be the result? Well, we're finding out. Now, church, look what happened when the church of the New Testament was scattered. Acts 8. This crisis didn't lead to the end of the church, but to the explosive expansion of the church. Acts 8, verse 4. Those who were scattered shared the good news wherever they went. And we're going to be talking about how you can do that even in this lockdown time of social distancing. More than ever, I want to encourage you. And maybe the COVID-19 pandemic is our Acts chapter 8 moment. In the next little while, I'm going to be sending you some mission moments, short videos, I promise. Some things you might be able to do right now in the situation God has placed you in. Why? Because you, my dear brothers and sisters, you and me, we're still the church, and we must never forget that. Amen.